Ryan Rowland-Smith does a great job covering the Mariners, and he joins me now here on High Heat. Proof of life, Ryan. Julio Rodriguez finally getting the first one of the season. Hopefully many more to come.
Yeah, and you can see what that meant to him too. You see what he did with that trident. You know, they hand that off to the guy at the top, at the top step of the dugout. They walk through, but he wasn't letting go of that. Now, I'm telling you right now, he was struggling, and you could feel it too. I feel like the whole offense felt it, because when he gets going, I'm telling you, and he started getting going back in Denver right before this blast. And look, they ain't done it. Dude, you cannot live there 91 middle in against Julio Rodriguez, man. Once he gets the ball in the air, that ground ball percentage is starting to dip. But once he gets the ball in the air, man, he does some serious damage, and I think he's going to go off from here.
Yeah, it was the hardest hit and longest homer of the season for the Mariners. What do you think took so long? I mean, we're about 3.5, 4 weeks into the season. What gave?
Yeah, I think that with Julio going into spring training, the biggest emphasis was talking about that ground ball rate. Look, he hits the ball. He's always in the top 5% when you're talking about ex-velo, and those balls can shoot through the infield. But when he really gets going, you can see that ground ball rate start to dip, because he's starting to get on the ball up in the air. So that was the biggest emphasis for him. I think that got in his head just a little bit. I think he was trying to overcorrect something in his swing. And then I feel like there was a series against the Reds, and then going into Denver, I think he just kind of went back to, you know what, I'm just going to make good hard contact, and whatever happens, happens if it ends up on the ground. And that approach, just making better contact. Look, the ex-velo is going to come. And I think watching that, it's just freed him up. He just looks completely different. He's not trying to overdo it, and he's in a good spot right now. So I think the month of May is going to be a good one.
And the Mariners are in a good spot, Ryan. They're 12-11. They lead the AL West, and they're just getting Julio Rodriguez going. But you wanted to talk a bit about disruptors in certain divisions.
Yes.
Who's the biggest disruptor in the AL West?
Well, look, I'm going to go through the entire league here, but I think that watching these teams around baseball, you know, some teams that are hovering around. And again, I want to preface this by saying these are not teams that I think are going to essentially go to the playoffs. But if they're hovering around, man, they can disrupt a division. Now, we'll start with the AL West, right? Now, I'm going to say the Angels. The reason I'm saying the Angels, they're off to an okay start, is because you've got Mike Trout in the middle of that lineup. I mean, anyone with Mike Trout, he's got 9 bombs already. And then you got a little bit of offense underneath him. Even Miguel Sano, one of the hardest ex-velos in the major leagues. Logan O'Hoppe, man, he is so fun to watch. The rookie catcher behind the dish, he's hitting 329. And Taylor Ward at 278. So if you run into some good pitching, whether it's Tyler Anderson or Reed Detmers, they can cause some issues. And I'm going to say the Angels in this division, because you've still got the Mariners are going to make a good run, the Texas Rangers, and I'm still not counting out the Houston Astros. They will be a factor. But if there is going to be that disruptor, it's going to be the Angels.
All right, so the Angels right now have 24 home runs. That's 6th in the American League. You already mentioned Mike Trout has 9 this year. That leads the league. What about the AL Central? Who, in your mind, Ryan, is the biggest disruptor there?
All right, I'm going to go with the KC Royals because of their pitching. It's been pretty good right now. Brady Singer, if he can ever figure out that changeup, he's off to a really good start. And I feel like he's slowly getting the confidence. He's got that good sinker, and that changeup comes along. Seth Lugo's dealing. And we talked a month ago about one of the biggest breakouts. I know he's coming off a rough start, but Cole Reagan's, man, that kid is absolutely electric. So there's enough pitching there. Plus, on the offensive side, do they have the depth in the lineup? Probably not, but you got a couple of veterans who are playing well, Salvi Perez, Bobby Witt, and they got a nice little run differential going. So I think the Kansas City Royals, when you're looking at the Central, it's a weaker division. It is very winnable in that division. They're 14-10, and I think they can maintain that for a little bit and hover around for sure.
It's crazy to think, too, that the Guardians at 17-6 have the best record in the league, but I like your pick with Kansas City. All right, let's finish out the American League. What about the AL East? Who's the best disruptor in your mind?
All right, well, listen, this is a tough division. We know about that. Obviously, the Orioles are making a run. The Yankees are off to a great start. But you cannot deny the Boston Red Sox and that rotation. Look, I know they're throwing a bunch of breaking balls, and I get it. They're not going deep into games. But a 1.8 starters ERA, that is insane. So that is good to see. And I think, too, when you look at them, when you look at Tyler O'Neill coming back, Rafael Devers in the middle of that lineup, I just think that this is a team that can hover around just enough, especially if they keep this up with that starting pitching. Tanner Houck, Cutter Crawford, and Brian Bayer has looked good. I think they have enough there to stick around for sure. Make a run. Again, I'm saying they're not going to win the division. I think it's just too competitive with those teams. But I'm impressed with what I'm seeing so far, especially from the starting pitching.
Yeah, no doubt. 13-11 is the record, but the best starting pitching in the game. From the American League to the National League, who do you like in the NL West to shake things up?
All right, if there was one team, and you mentioned shaking it up, and that has a chance to even win the division, I know they have the Dodgers in that division, but the Padres, look, I think, first of all, Dylan Cease, he's back, man. He looks really good from just a couple of years ago. He is absolutely filthy at the moment, and I just see Musgrove and Hugh Darvish. They're off to an okay start, but I think they're going to start to find their groove. So I think they have enough starting pitching to get it done. Xander Bogaerts, he's not going to hit sub 200. You got Fernando Tatis, who's starting to look more and more like an MVP candidate. So again, if there's any team with these disruptors that look to me like they have a chance to win the division, yes, I know the Dodgers loom in that division, but I feel like the Padres, they're going to do some damage. And look, I think they're beyond their big spending days from a couple off seasons ago. So you're talking about the trade deadline. If these teams, like some of the teams I mentioned, get to that deadline and they're still hovering, who knows?
Yeah, no question. They're only a game and a half out of the Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers aren't playing well overall so far this season, but the San Diego Padres are right there. Okay, both Central divisions in each league, I think, are up for grabs. Who do you like in the NL Central?
Well, you mentioned that. Look, the Cubs are sticking around. They're off to a decent start. I see Cody Bellinger starting to heat up. But that's the biggest thing, right? I think that the Central is definitely winnable. They've had a few injuries. And sometimes I look at this too. When you get to the end of April, you're dealing with a Hendricks injury. He just didn't look right at the beginning of the year. They're going to get him right. Ian Happ is back as well. Suzuki, who was crushing the ball, wasn't hitting home runs, but the exit velo was through the roof. I still think the Cubs have enough in there, enough offense. And don't forget, too, you're talking about a top 5 farm system. And a lot of those guys, the top 5 picks of the top 30, they're all in AA and AAA. So one of them can come up and make a huge, huge impact. But I think that the Central in both leagues is very winnable. So that's why I got the Cubs hovering around and disrupting a little bit.
And the Cubs have the Astros right now at Wrigley Field, who are horrendous so far in 2024. Finally, for me, Ryan, before we go to break and welcome you back after the break, the NL East, who's the biggest disruptor there?
All right. Now, I do have to give him some love here. I'm going to go with the New York Mets. Now, look, they're off to it. They're starting to slide. They had a nice little run. And when you watch that run, they had enough pitching, I think, with Manaea Quintana and Severino. They just have to stop walking people. They've got the highest walk rate. They're not throwing enough strikes, even when they're on that run. And so if they can just cut down just a little bit on the walk rate, I still feel like there's enough firepower. There's enough defense as well. And I mentioned the trade deadline. Look, if Stephen Cohen, if they're hovering around and that owner all of a sudden is like, hey, you know what? I might just trade in some of these prospects I got last year for some of these big names I got rid of. Who knows? He might get a little crazy here if they're hovering around a game or two out of the division and start messing up that AL East. But look, like I said, not going to win it, but they might disrupt it just a little bit.
If he really wants to get crazy at the end of the season, he should sign Juan Soto and really piss off the New York Yankees. All right.
Cody Bellinger comes in with a 7-game hit streak. First pitch. And that is hammered deep to right. Kiss it goodbye. 2-run home run for Cody Bellinger on the first pitch he sees, and it is 2-0 Cubs. And Tauchman drives it to left and deep. It sends back McCormick, and that ball is gone. A 3-run home run the other way for Mike Tauchman, and it is 5-0 Cubs in the first inning.
The Houston Astros are off to a rough start in 2024. They've lost 3 straight. They're playing the Chicago Cubs again today at Wrigley in a second of a 3-game set. Ryan, what have you noticed so far with Houston? Because they are 10 games under 500 for the first time since 2016.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I'm not used to it, especially being out here in the AL West. But I think that, JP France, who we just saw giving it up last night, when you look at the starting rotation, they got all kinds of holes through there. Framber Valdez, who's coming off like kind of a rough end of the year last year. Christian Javier on the IL. And then JP France, I just don't think they've got the depth in the rotation. Something's going on with their pitching. And then on the bullpen side of the thing, obviously Hader has figured some things out. He started throwing the changeup. But that's their bread and butter, right? The starting pitching is one of the worst in baseball. And that is when you don't have that foundation. I saw that, with the Seattle Mariners, how they turned it around, is having that foundation. They've always had it. I know Verlander's coming back. I just don't know if that's enough. But they're going to be a factor. But I'm telling you right now, Joe Espada, he has got his hands full as a first-time manager. That's for sure.
That's amazing that you bring that up. It's a perfect segue, actually, because the best team in baseball right now, the Cleveland Guardians, have a first-year manager. One of the worst teams in baseball, the Houston Astros, also do. Tell me the difference, in your opinion, of what you're noticing with Jose Espada as well as Stephen Vogt of the Guardians.
Well, I think that, look, it's interesting, right? So, like, I've had all different managers throughout my career, and I feel like if you're in a situation now, Espada, he knows that team. Look, he's been in the trenches with them, but when you transition to that leadership role, sometimes you try and overdo it just a little bit, or you try and change the way you operate and how you go about you relate with the players. So you cannot lose the veteran players. That's the biggest thing. Now, I'm not saying Espada has lost the veteran players, but if you have a situation where you're off to a rough start, your starting pitching is not giving you what you want, you try and have that team meeting after 3-game losing streak or whatever it may be. You have to say the right thing. So I think he's got his hands full. You coming off a situation where Dusty Baker, you watched him operate. He's been around forever. This team kind of has a feeling of, after everything that happened when they came back from 2021 with fans in the seats and heckling him about the whole scandal and everything else. Now he's in a tough spot. That is for sure. On the flip side, Stephen Vogt, look, he was in Seattle on the coaching staff last year. He is a player's manager, and I think he has the best when it comes to the Cleveland Guardians. I think he has the best mix, right? He's got some good veteran players that can kind of steer the ship in the right direction, set the tone. And he just translates that message so well with whether it's a veteran player or even a young player too. So he's in a great spot, not to mention the Guardians are kind of, the expectations weren't extremely high. So he can come in, not like Espada with the Astros. But so I think he's in a great spot. And by the way, when he got that job, I was like, oh man, perfect fit to go off to manage a team. That's for sure.
Yeah, Joe Espada and Stephen Vogt, I have a tremendous amount of respect for both guys, completely at the opposite ends of the spectrum right now in terms of slow starts or good starts. Speaking of slow starts, though, Ryan, there are some key sluggers in this game that are off to some molasses type of starts. Let's start with Aaron Judge, hitting 180, 31 strikeouts in 24 games. You know that he's going to get it right, though.
Yeah, I think so. I think what helps with Aaron Judge is, look, the team's playing well, right? So you look around the league, and there is some of these guys who are off to rough starts. But I think with Aaron Judge, the biggest thing, you're looking at his 3 home runs. He had 5 last year, and then the month of May, he went off and had the 12 bombs. So I'm not saying he's a slow starter career-wise, because he's always put up good Aprils, don't get me wrong. But I feel like the month of May is where he really starts to get into a groove. The swing and miss is as low as it was last year, so I'm not super concerned about that, even though the strikeout numbers are up. The exit velo's up. I think there's enough underlining numbers for Aaron Judge to go off. But like I said, it helps when your team around you is doing good things. And
he's not the only one. What about Paul Goldschmidt?
Yes, and that's the other end of the spectrum, right? He's on a team with the Cardinals where, regardless of the expectations, they are scuffling. So you put more weight on your shoulders as a veteran player, I think. And I think with Goldie too, look, he's been around long enough. I played with him with the Arizona Diamondbacks, and he went through a couple ruts there. That was back in 2014. And he just has that quiet approach. He kind of understands himself. I'm not too worried about this. I think what magnifies this is that the Cardinals are off to such a rough start. And he is that veteran player. He is that guy in the middle of the lineup that you kind of lean on. And I think that adds to it just a little bit as you get out of the month of April.
All right, Ryan Rowland-Smith, we always appreciate the information. Great to talk to you. I'm glad that Julio got the first one, hopefully first of many for your Seattle Mariners. We'll talk soon.
For sure. Sounds good. Thanks, Lana.